So one question that people asked right away is, do we have to adhere to the exact wording of the strategy? And the short answer to that is no, but the strategy still needs all of its ingredients in order to work. So this strategy is made up of telling kids what they're reading, why they're reading, and how they might read it in a way that helps them accomplish the purpose you set for it. So we think about it as assigning a reading task, a specific reading task, with a purpose that is specific to that text, not like, read carefully because it's good to read carefully in general, but for this particular text at this particular moment, what are we paying attention to? And strategy, how? How are we going to go about paying attention to those things? What do we need to be doing as we read in order to accomplish the purpose we've set for using this text? So you can do that with some slightly different wording. However, in order to use this strategy, students need to know sort of the what, the why, and the how. Now, 100% of the classrooms that I observe tell kids what they're supposed to be reading. Turn to this page, take out this book, take a look at this thing with me. That's never a problem. About half the classrooms I observe also tell kids why they're reading it. Sometimes it's not a very specific purpose, but there often is some sort of purpose. It's very rare for me to find a classroom where the teacher articulates, instead of just implying, really articulates what's the strategy that we're going to use in order to do this. And so this strategy, this clear task parameter strategy, is really there as a reminder for us to do all of those three things explicitly instead of assuming that students know or already have an idea of how they should go about accomplishing the task. So you could think about this in a few different ways with different wording. You can use your own wording. It is helpful to do it in this order, as we discovered with the math group. The directions get confusing quite quickly if you tell them how to do it before you tell them why they're doing it. So we do want to keep the order, but maybe you're not asking them to read a continuous text. Maybe you actually want them to look at something static, like a cartoon. So maybe instead of read, it's look at. Or maybe it's turn to. Or maybe it's play, if you are in a music or instrumental music or choral setting. Maybe it's play or sing this thing, so interact with the text. That's what's going on in this read column. And then why? So maybe it is in order to, I don't know, determine the bias. Maybe it is in order to find evidence of something. Maybe it's in order to pay attention to what the bases are doing. And then we're actually going to tell kids how to do that instead of assuming that they all know how they should go about determining bias or finding evidence or paying attention. And some of them will. We're going to give them one possible way to begin that task. So I want you to look at this cartoon in order to determine bias by looking for exaggerated features. Looking for exaggeration. I won't write it all out. I want you to turn to this page of your science textbook in order to find evidence of atrophy in the image by looking for details that look like has stopped growing or it has failed. Looking for images that are no longer living. I want you to play this line, paying attention to the baseline, by listening for the downbeats of every bar, because the basses play on the downbeats of every bar. And if you listen to the downbeats, you'll be sure that you are listening to the basses. So sometimes it seems like this would be obvious to students, and maybe for 80% of the kids in the room it is obvious. They know how to go about addressing the purpose that you set for them. But for the small number of kids who aren't sure, or who had one way of doing it, but your way is more efficient, this is a really important piece. For the kids that don't need it, it still shows them, it demonstrates to them, you've got a plan for them, you're not going to let them fail at this reading task. And for the kids that weren't sure how to begin, it gives them enough fuel to initiate the activity. It doesn't mean they'll always be successful with it. They might run into trouble when they get started, but at least they know how to begin. And that was the most commonly reported outcome of using this strategy that students got to work faster and didn't ask, why are we doing what we're doing, quite as often. And those are good outcomes. That helps you along the way with what you're planning to do with your lesson. So, can you use different words? Absolutely, but make sure that you keep all the parts.